She commanded the runways of the 90s. Vogue declared her the planet's most stunning woman. Linda Evangelista wasn't merely showcasing garments, she was revolutionizing the entire concept of supermodeling. When I initially chopped off my locks and traveled to Milan for Fashion Week, I was scheduled for approximately 20 runway shows, but 15 of them dropped me because they couldn't comprehend my new hairstyle initially. Yet within just one season, everyone was desperate to replicate her look. That's the power Linda wielded. From Versace catwalks to that legendary Freedom music video, she dominated every sphere until she simply vanished. So what truly occurred with Linda Evangelista? Why did she retreat during her career's pinnacle? And how did a single choice permanently alter her life and appearance forever? Before the silence and the procedures, Linda stood at the epicenter of a fashion transformation alongside Naomi, Christy, and Claudia. She wasn't merely under the spotlight, she was the spotlight itself. But unlike numerous top models, Linda wasn't stumbled upon by accident. She didn't fall into modeling by chance. She pursued it relentlessly. I genuinely desired to showcase fashion. I wanted to model because I was completely fascinated with fashion. I was captivated by clothing. I simply adored it, and I understood that's exactly what I wanted to pursue. I wasn't spotted in a shopping center. From her earliest years, Linda was magnetized to elegance, secretly borrowing her aunt's cosmetics, gathering costume accessories, and covering her bedroom walls with pages torn from Vogue. But her journey wasn't smooth. She began with $8 hourly bridal catalog photo shoots in Canada, storing every penny to construct a test portfolio. When she eventually reached Europe, most assignments went to taller, more traditional girls, but Linda refused to surrender. It required several years for me to gain momentum. I worked continuously, but I didn't create brilliant work immediately. So I endured considerable hardship to reach my position, and I value it. It's exactly what I hoped for. She wasn't an instant sensation. She was quite the opposite. She persevered until the world took notice, and once Vogue finally hired her, everything changed. Linda had made it. But her partnership with photographer Steven Meisel would transform everything. The duo became creative partners, constructing images so legendary they characterized an entire generation. It's quite simple to work once with a photographer because everyone's intrigued, but to get rehired repeatedly, that requires numerous factors. They must adore you. Together they developed a visual vocabulary of fashion, refined, intense, transformative, and as fashion shifted from minimalism to glamour, from catalogs to culture, Linda adapted alongside it. Then arrived the moment that changed everything. We were just reaching fashion industry people, and suddenly I was being noticed by teenagers on the street, and that's what really accomplished it. That single video didn't just solidify her position, it made her eternal. She was no longer merely a model. She was a cultural phenomenon. She possessed the face, the skill, the discipline. The world couldn't stop observing her until suddenly she disappeared. For an extended period, Linda Evangelista seemed to evaporate. No interviews, no campaigns, no runway comebacks. Like the other top models in an industry constructed on visibility, she vanished into silence. Naomi continued on runways. Cindy launched beauty lines. Claudia was closing Versace shows. But Linda, nothing, not a red carpet, not a campaign, not even a candid photograph. The silence was deafening. Fans wondered, had she retired? Was she sick? But nobody knew the reality. What people didn't realize was that Linda wasn't resting. She was concealing, not from fame, but from herself. In 2015, Linda underwent a cosmetic treatment called CoolSculpting, a non-surgical procedure designed to freeze and eliminate fat cells. It was promoted as quick, painless, and efficient, but for Linda, it went terribly wrong. Instead of reducing the fat, she developed a rare and catastrophic side effect known as paradoxical adipose hyperplasia. Her fat cells didn't dissolve, they multiplied, hardened, and expanded. She said it created bulges that distorted her body, leaving her unrecognizable, and most tragically, the damage was permanent. Do you notice the angle of my arms? I cannot place them beside my body because this bulge is forcing them to extend at an angle. For over 5 years, Linda lived in almost complete isolation. She avoided mirrors, rejected every job proposal, hid from friends. She stopped attending events, even the ones that celebrated the supermodel era she helped establish. And it wasn't about vanity, it wasn't about ego, it was about identity. The face that had constructed her career no longer felt like hers. My son used to comment before I explained the truth. He used to make remarks frequently, like, "Mommy, do you remember when you used to Be enjoyable. Why don't you laugh anymore? So I despise what this has done to my relationship with him. It wasn't just her body image that was shattered, it was her soul. She didn't recognize herself, and neither did the people closest to her. She fell into a profound depression at times. She said she couldn't even manage going outside. And while she was suffering, the industry she once defined remained silent. No designer came calling, no magazine offered to photograph her. It was as if fashion, the world she helped construct, had no space for her anymore. Eventually, Linda filed a $50 million lawsuit against CoolSculpting's parent company, claiming physical disfigurement, emotional trauma, and lost income. The company disputed her claims, publicly stating the procedure was safe, tested, and widely performed. But for Linda, it was too late. The damage, physically, emotionally, financially, had already been inflicted. And what made her story even more devastating was how quiet it all was. This wasn't a scandal. There were no meltdowns, no addictions, no breakdowns caught on camera. Linda's story was different. Her fall was quiet, invisible, psychological, and that's what makes it even more haunting. She wasn't destroyed by the fame machine. She was destroyed by the pressure to remain perfect within it, by a culture that tells women to stay ageless, flawless, and invisible once they're not. She did what so many are pressured to do and paid the ultimate price for it. Then, in 2022, after nearly 5 years in the shadows, Linda Evangelista stepped in front of the camera again, this time not for a luxury brand or a runway show, but for herself. She appeared on the cover of British Vogue, her first major editorial since the CoolSculpting trauma, but this wasn't the glossy fashion moment we were accustomed to. The shoot was different, carefully lit, strategically posed. Her jawline was shaped with tape and elastic, her neck partially concealed. Linda wasn't pretending the damage hadn't happened. She was managing how the world would see it. The image was striking not because it was flawless, but because it carried the weight of survival in her. British Vogue interview: Linda admitted, "I miss my work so much, but I can't just go out and accept jobs like I used to, not with what I look like now." Her honesty hit like a devastating blow. For decades, she had been one of the most photographed women in the world. Now she was confronting the truth so many women are forced to hide, that the price of beauty can be irreversible. The Vogue cover made headlines across the globe, not because Linda looked glamorous, but because she was finally telling the truth about what happened to her. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a reckoning with the impossible standards that the fashion world had forced onto her and onto generations of women. Soon after, Linda was invited to star in the Fendi campaign celebrating 25 years of the iconic baguette bag. There she was standing beside Kate Moss, shot in classic black and white. No fanfare, no filters, just presence. For the first time since her disappearance, Linda stepped back into the fashion world, not as an object, but as a woman who had survived something deeper than most people could imagine. She didn't pretend everything was fine in her interview. She said, "Am I cured mentally? Absolutely not. But I'm trying to love myself again." The campaign didn't signal a full return to modeling. She wasn't walking runways or fronting beauty lines like she used to, but it was something more meaningful, a message that said, "I'm still here. I never left even when you stopped looking for me." Linda didn't come back to prove she was flawless. She came back to prove that flaws don't erase value. She's opened up about mental health, about loss, about aging, about how difficult it is to look in the mirror and still recognize yourself, especially when your face was once your currency. This was the same woman who once helped define an entire generation of beauty, and now she was rewriting what beauty could mean. She didn't return with a makeover. She didn't reinvent herself. She simply showed up with pain, with courage, and with the same quiet strength that had built her legacy decades earlier. Linda Evangelista didn't just return, she redefined what a comeback looks like, not with perfection, not with publicity, but with truth. The world saw Linda Evangelista return. They saw the styling, the lighting, the pose. They called it brave, but they didn't see what came next, because the truth is, even after the cameras flashed again, Linda was still in hiding, not from the public anymore, but from the pain she never expected to relive. Just months after her return, Linda quietly faced something even more terrifying than disfigurement: a second breast cancer diagnosis. She didn't tell her friends, she didn't tell the industry, she barely told herself. In her interview, she admitted, "I had a bilateral mastectomy. I thought I was clear, but the cancer came back. I kept it quiet. I didn't want to burden anyone." And once again, Linda vanished. But this time not because she didn't feel beautiful, because she didn't know if she'd survive. Through all of it, one person remained by her side, not a photographer, not a stylist: Christy Turlington. In an interview, Linda said, "Christy was the only one who checked on me regularly. She never gave up on me." In a world where friendships often dissolve as fast As fashion trends, Christy's loyalty was constant, a quiet thread holding Linda together when everything else was falling apart. When she finally returned to the studio, it wasn't to chase approval, it was to reclaim control. In 2023, Linda and Maisel released a book together, a visual archive of her career and a personal act of authorship. In her own words, "I wanted to be seen how I choose to be seen, not how they used to see me. That's the difference in an industry that once used her image to define beauty." She reclaimed it on her own terms. No ad campaign, no runway, no apology. Just the woman who started it all, still standing when she disappeared. The first time the fashion world moved on, but the second time they listened, because by then everyone knew Linda Evangelista wasn't just a model. She was a mirror for every woman who had ever been discarded when they aged, a mirror for everyone who ever tried to disappear because they didn't feel enough, a mirror for everyone who has survived something the world couldn't see. And maybe that's the legacy. Not the runway, not the magazine covers, not even the perfect images she once helped create, but the moment she chose to break the illusion, she simply stepped out of the frame until she was ready to write the caption herself. And when she did, it wasn't for approval, it wasn't for beauty, it was for truth. And that is the most powerful image of all.